let's talk about one of the most underestimated forms of strength a woman can possess: the ability to protect her inner world. Not guard it out of fear, but preserve it out of wisdom. We live in an era where oversharing is glorified. Social media rewards exposure. People believe that if you don't constantly display your emotions, your plans, and your private life, you're somehow hiding something negative. But here's the truth: what you protect is often what stays pure. The more you put something out into the open, the more it becomes subject to other people's interpretation, distortion, and influence. And that includes your thoughts, your feelings, and the mental strategies you use to navigate life. Your inner world, your mind, your heart, your core values, isn't a public park for anyone to wander through. It's more like a private garden. You decide who gets in, what seeds get planted, and how much sunlight or shade it needs. And here's where a lot of people get it wrong. They think privacy is the same as secrecy. It's not. Secrecy is fear-based. It hides things out of shame or guilt. Privacy is strength-based. It chooses to protect things because they are valuable. Think about your goals for a moment. When you first have an idea, that spark of inspiration is fragile. It hasn't yet grown roots. If you tell everyone about it too soon, you risk drowning it in a flood of other people's opinions, some well-meaning, some jealous, some simply careless. A premature idea is like a candle in the wind. All it takes is one careless comment to blow it out. But when you nurture it privately, you give it time to grow into a flame strong enough to survive the storms of doubt. The same is true for your emotional processing. If something hurt you deeply, betrayal, heartbreak, disappointment, sharing it instantly with everyone you know doesn't always help. In fact, it can make the wound deeper. When you're still in the middle of pain, your perspective is raw, unfiltered, and vulnerable to distortion. People may misinterpret your emotions, give you bad advice, or even use your openness against you. Sometimes you need to process privately, let your emotions settle, and then decide what part of that story you want to share and with whom. And let's talk about strategy, how you think, how you solve problems, how you make decisions. These are not things to hand over to every person you meet. Your mental strategies are like the playbook of a winning team. You don't give your opponents a copy before the game starts. Not because you're being dishonest, but because some moves work best when they're executed without an audience. People who understand the value of silence in certain moments know that the right action, taken quietly, can be far more powerful than a loud declaration. Now, there will be people who will pressure you to open up more, to be transparent, to let people in. And yes, transparency has its place. Trust requires honesty. But honesty doesn't mean total exposure. You can be truthful without being fully uncovered. You can share parts of yourself without putting your entire soul on the table for public consumption. Protecting your inner world also protects your self-identity. The more you hand over your inner thoughts to the court of public opinion, the more you begin to shape them to fit what others want to hear. Slowly, you stop thinking for yourself and start thinking for the audience you've created. And that is one of the fastest ways to lose who you truly are. There's also a psychological principle at play here. What we keep private holds more power over our behavior than what we expose prematurely. When you silently commit to a goal, you are more likely to follow through because there's no instant gratification from public praise. The work itself becomes the reward. But if you announce it too soon, you may feel a false sense of accomplishment just from telling people about it, which can reduce your drive to actually make it happen. And there's a deeper, almost spiritual aspect to this. Your mind is your sanctuary. It's where you shape your beliefs, your hopes, your resilience. If you allow too many voices into that space, it stops being yours. Imagine trying to meditate in a crowded room with people shouting over you. It's impossible to hear your own thoughts. Privacy allows you to filter out the noise so you can hear the quiet truth within yourself. Of course, this doesn't mean you isolate yourself completely. It means you become intentional. You decide who earns access to your raw, unedited self. You give yourself the time and space to fully understand your emotions before you hand them to someone else to interpret. You build your ideas in the dark so they're strong enough to stand in the light. When you protect your inner world, you're not closing yourself off from others. You're opening yourself up to a life where your peace isn't constantly at the mercy of outside forces. You become harder to shake, less reactive, more grounded. People may notice you speak less about certain things, but when you do speak, it carries more weight. because your words are not for performance, they're for purpose. So I want you to remember this. Your mind, your heart, and your strategies are treasures. Not everyone deserves access to them. And once you give something away, you can't always take it back. Keep some things sacred, not because you're hiding, but because you're honoring their value. A woman's strength is not in what she shows the world, it's in what she chooses to protect from it. Let's move to something just as important, guarding your vulnerabilities. Every one of us carries within us certain soft spots, places that are tender because they hold our deepest insecurities, our private mistakes, our quiet fears. These are the parts of ourselves that, if placed in the wrong hands, can be misunderstood, mocked, or even used against us, and yet so often we hand them over too easily, sometimes in the name of honesty, sometimes in a search for connection, and sometimes simply because we've been conditioned to believe that full openness equals strength. But in reality, strength is knowing when and with whom to be open. Vulnerability is not weakness, let's be clear about that. In fact, vulnerability is one of the most courageous states a human can enter. It takes bravery to admit when you've been hurt, when you've failed, when you're uncertain. But courage doesn't mean recklessness. Just because you can open up to everyone doesn't mean you should. Some people have not earned the right to see your wounds, not because they're evil, but because they lack the emotional maturity, empathy, or discretion to handle that kind of access with care. There's a psychological truth here. People often respond to your vulnerabilities based on their own fears, biases, and insecurities. If you share your fears with someone who has unresolved fears of their own, they may minimize you. If you share your mistakes with someone competitive, they may use them to elevate themselves at your expense. If you share your insecurities with someone who enjoys control, they may use that knowledge to keep you small. This doesn't mean you should live in suspicion. It means you should live with discernment. Think of your vulnerabilities like a locked diary. Inside are the most delicate truths about you. You wouldn't just hand that diary to a stranger on the street, would you? No. You'd choose someone you trust deeply, someone who has proven over time that they won't read those pages with judgment or pass them around for others to dissect. The same principle applies to real life. You decide who gets a key. We've all had moments where we've shared something deeply personal and instantly regretted it. Maybe the listener didn't respond how we hoped. They laughed, they shrugged, they changed the subject. Or worse, they repeated it to someone else. That sting you felt afterward wasn't just about what you shared, it was about realizing that you gave a piece of yourself to someone who didn't know how to hold it. And once it's out there, you can't fully take it back. Guarding your vulnerabilities isn't about building walls so high that no one can reach you. It's about building gates and choosing when to open them. It's the difference between shutting people out entirely and letting the wrong people in too quickly. It's a practice of self-respect, respecting your own emotional landscape enough to keep it safe from those who might trample it without meaning to. Here's where the modern world complicates things. We've been told that vulnerability sells. Social media encourages us to broadcast our struggles because it's relatable. We see people oversharing online in the hope of gaining connection, sympathy, or validation. And while there's nothing wrong with sharing your story, you have to ask yourself, is this my truth to share right now, or am I putting it out there because I want something from the audience? True healing and growth often happen in private first. Public vulnerability without private healing can easily turn into public self-exposure that leaves you feeling emptier, not stronger. And there's another layer. Once people know your emotional triggers, they can consciously or unconsciously use them to influence you. This is why narcissists and manipulators are so skilled at gaining control. They listen closely, not always to understand, but to gather information. That's why emotional boundaries are so crucial. By deciding what vulnerabilities you share, you limit the power anyone else can have over you. When you guard your vulnerabilities, you're also protecting your self-image. You stop giving other people the opportunity to define you by your lowest moments. Your mistakes become lessons you carry internally until you choose to share them as wisdom rather than wounds. You're no longer at the mercy of how others will perceive you in your weakest moments because you've chosen to reveal those moments on your terms, in your timing, to people who've earned the right to hear them. It's worth noting, guarding your vulnerabilities is not about being cold or distant. It's not about never letting anyone see you cry. It's about choosing those moments carefully, knowing that real intimacy comes from mutual trust, not instant exposure. And intimacy, the kind that is safe and lasting, is built over time. There's a quiet, unshakable confidence in a woman who knows that not everyone deserves the deepest parts of her story. She can be warm, open, and friendly while still holding back the parts of herself that are meant for only a select few. That balance, being approachable yet protected, is one of the strongest positions you can live from. It tells the world, I'm not hiding because I'm ashamed, I'm protecting because I'm valuable. When you begin living this way, something shifts. The people who respect boundaries will lean in because they understand the privilege of being trusted. The ones who demand total access right away will pull back because they're not looking to know you, they're looking to consume you, and you learn to tell the difference quickly. So, yes, be vulnerable, but be intentional. Choose wisely. Protect your emotional core not because it's fragile, but because it's precious. The more care you take in deciding who gets access to it, the stronger you will stand, both in your private world and in the public one. A woman's greatest security doesn't come from who she lets in, it comes